got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been getting out of work, and I've been shutting down stores.
Hi, and welcome to this special edition of Put That Coffee Down, the Freight Sales Show for closers. My name is Kevin Hill. I'm your host, as always. I'm live on location here in Plano, Texas today with Nicole Glenn, the founder and CEO of Candor Expedite. And we're going to talk a little bit about sales. We're going to talk about personal branding and the market.
Yes.
So
I'm
Nicole?
excited. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to have someone come and visit our space.
Yeah,
I
like coming visiting offices now.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's relaxing. You get to see everyone's workspace, their workflow, and their personality. You know, we have the green wall with the inspirational quotes and what a mission statement or founding principles. What do you call it?
These are the things that I kind of live by.
Mm-hmm.
To just put it out there to people. I think if you're in a place that you see good things consistently, it kind of makes you want to all right, I want to go. I want to do these things. And so even in my office and then in the other offices, we try to sprinkle that in. So yes, it's good to have.
And you can see it behind, you have the grind, right? And grinding it out every single day. That is logistics.
Yes.
That's personal branding too. Yeah. Grind, persistence, perseverance, that's logistics too. Perseverance.
It is. And that's sales.
It is. It is. It's not for the weak of heart.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of problems, a lot of no's. Just persevere. There's going to be a lot of, I'll say days, but really weeks, months, sometimes years where you don't see the results immediately.
Right.
But you're building foundation with execution down here to all of a sudden one day everything clicks and you don't go from 0 to 1, you go from 0 to 100.
And then you start over. And so I think that's the part that in sales that, we could dive into on the constant start over of things.
The constant start over.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about cold calling, pandemic, post-pandemic, cold outreach. Let's put it that way. Cold outreach and why there are better methods. Is that a better way to phrase that?
Well, there's multiple methods.
There's multiple. Everyone, I think, starts out with cold outreach.
Yes, you have to.
You have to.
Yes.
But you use that cold outreach just not to get sales in today, which you always need, right?
Right.
But it's building a network for the future to where you do much less cold outreach. Mm-hmm. And that cold outreach has a different personality 2 years, 5 years down the road.
For me, the one thing I always think about is everything I do, unless I'm literally taking a shipment that day, everything that I do is for tomorrow. And so I keep that mindset on a cold outreach or even attending an event where you're shaking someone's hand. You just don't know where that's going to go, right? You don't know what tomorrow looks like and their position or your position or a different mode, or you just never know where the wind's going to blow when you're doing things.
You don't. I think a lot of times in sales, because we're talking about monthly quotas and annual targets, that we would sometimes have a focus on the short term.
Yep.
But it's a long
hard
game.
Not to.
It's really hard not to.
It is hard not to because you see the effort that you're putting into it on a daily. Mm-hmm. And so, and I think as time's progressing, we're starting to notice that people want more and more instant gratification on things. But this is the topic that I want to dive into is really understanding your value proposition. Because I attend and I talk to so many different people, especially in the truckload brokerage space. We're going to talk niche, right?
Yeah.
But I meet these folks. And so if you're in the truckload brokerage space, this is a little tip for you. Really kind of crafting out that messaging on where that value comes within their truckload brokerage space. I literally go, so what do you do? And they're like, I'm in truckload brokerage. And I'm like, and if you ask,
give
me more. Yeah.
If you ask, how are you different? You are 99 out of 100 times going to hear the same exact thing each and every time by someone in LA, New York, Dallas, Chicago. It doesn't matter where they're based. If they're in truckload brokerage, their value prop is essentially the same.
Yes. So how do you craft that message that actually impacts somebody? I think that's
hard.
It is. It
I mean,
is.
that's number one. That is hard. Even if you have a niche and differentiation, it's hard to craft that.
It is. But
yes,
you have to keep breaking it down to your whys. So you have to ask yourself 5 times further. So we are in truckload brokerage. Why?
Yeah.
And so then when are you delivering? Why? And so when you keep going down those whys on how your organization does things, you will find your value add.
your value add, which is kind of like the atom,
Yes.
right? You have to get it down
Yeah.
to the atom, the very simplest substance
Mhm.
of your value prop, and then build off of that.
Yes.
But it is very difficult to get down. You kind of have to take a microscope out
Yes.
and examine what your business is, what you're doing, why you're doing that, and compare it against the landscape.
And also asking leadership, like, what was the reason why you started this company? What did you envision in coming into this space that made this happen? So now that's business owner, but that messaging should be funneling down consistently from top to employee.
It should.
Mhm.
It really should. The larger the company gets, though, the less it is.
Right.
Right.
Then it just becomes a mission statement on the wall.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's tough to really break out of that because the bigger the organization gets, the more bureaucracy that is involved. It's just the natural play of things.
Mhm.
But yeah, why truckload?
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
That is, and it's very difficult. I mean, it's something that I think everyone's, you struggle with it. It's kind of like writing a paper. You know, whether it's a white paper or a blog article, it's difficult because once you start writing, you start teaching yourself.
And you
the
start,
topic.
you do.
You learn at a much deeper level.
You do. And sometimes, again, even with this giant well of things that we have, pulling out those things can be a little struggle, you know. So the best thing that we can do sometimes is actually step away from the day-to-day business. So take a day off and like get a hotel. I've done this. People think I'm like nuts. I'll get a hotel room and just sit there and like have a book or do different things so I can utilize that time to not think about the incoming emails or, you know, dive into that one thing, that interruption, you know, and it's like having your purpose on why you're there. You're not just going to sit there and stare, but having your purpose kind of mapped out. Like, I want to develop a better strategy for myself in sales to get past this cold calling thing and kind of starting with brainstorming. And the same thing happens then when you're writing you can almost write a blog on what you would do and advice that you should be taking, and then build out a strategy plan alongside of that.
You should. I've written probably 3 business plans so far, right?
Yes.
So 3 business plans. So the first one is about 25 pages whenever I developed Carrier List, right? And it was just an exercise for me. I sent it out to a bunch of people. I
you go to the SBA website and download it?
I did, yes. I did. Yeah, I did do that.
Yeah.
I'm the only person who's ever read that thing. No one else is going to read 25 pages, but I learned a lot about how to start a business, or not how to start a business in general, but what strategy to use in the competitive landscape just by writing that just for me.
Yes.
Well, I wrote it for other people, but it turned out to just be for me. So whenever I write a strategy or business plan, anything like that, it's really for me. I'm not the audience. It's not for anybody else. It's for me to discover exactly what I should be doing.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing if you're just in sales, right? If you're in sales, writing out a strategy for your sales strategy just for you, because you're going to dig down into those whys.
Exactly.
And if you just discover your own whys, I mean, that's all you need.
Right. And then you also have to tailor that why, bring that why to your customer base, and then learn their whys.
Yes.
And I think that's a piece, we could dive into
that is, right? And it always reminds me of the old maxim, no battle plan ever survives contact with the enemy, right? So no business plan, no strategy ever survives the contact with the market.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to be different. Their whys are going to be different than you thought they were. But that's fine too.
There's so much, and especially when we dive into transportation sales, like one of the most interesting things was when I actually hired somebody that joined me from the shipper side.
Yeah.
And getting that perspective and understanding the whys on the shipper side. And then what are the true challenges, and having that mindset to dig into that and realize that when you're in sales and you're selling to a certain audience, we get so one-track mind on what we think they want to hear. We don't understand how small of a piece we actually play as providers of logistics in their total role.
Yep.
And so when you uncover that why, you start seeing why people aren't answering your cold call, why they have to hit certain types of goal sets and what's pushing that. And so that has been, I mean, that's like eye-opening.
Yeah,
I had that.
And sometimes those goal sets and those those metrics, those KPIs that they're trying to hit have very little to do with transportation.
Exactly.
Or might play one little tiny key piece.
Yes.
But you have to find that tiny key piece to connect that with the overall KPI. The real KPI that they're driving at in transportation doesn't seem to be on the radar. You have to put it on the radar in that way.
Right. And then how you're going to actually create some sort of ease of pain.
Ease of pain.
Everybody has ease of pain, but then obviously the value of
how transportation can help hit your KPIs.
Yes.
You don't think it can, but I'm going to explain how it can. You'll get people's attention.
You will. You definitely will.
You definitely will. But let's talk about getting people's attention, bringing on new business without cold outreach.
Yes.
This
was a big... So let me give a little insight. I know I just kind of hopped on here and we dove right in, but I actually am the owner and founder of a company called Candor Expedite that focuses on time-sensitive shipping. So we are in the expedited space and have been expanding into the white glove side, first and final mile, and retail side of things. So to hop into the cold calling side, you think, first of all, as an expedited company, in order to even have a conversation with somebody, how do you develop that sense of trust? Like there are so many different hurdles that they do tie into just, all different modes. But for me, what I had been telling Kevin before we even started hitting record here is that this past year, I was able to bring on business around $6 million of additional revenue without the cold calling method. And so it's not something that you can just, end watching the show and just go, I'm doing that, right? There is a lot of work, like we had said previously, on you're working for tomorrow consistently, putting yourself out there consistently with either utilizing your personal brand, developing contacts and communications, referrals, really showing who you are as an individual and what you stand for in different social platforms. And then you start piquing the interest of individuals to talk to, the ones that you align with on your values and what you're marching to. And that's how that's been additional revenue. There's still sales to all of that too. There's going to conferences and shaking hands and getting to know people alongside of that. And then staying in contact with people throughout. I mean, there's some clients even today that the job market has changed so much, right? People have left their home base that they might have had for even 20 years.
Yeah.
I've seen some people literally leave. I thought, oh my gosh, I would never have thought that this person would have left. And then they go on to a new venture. And even if I didn't work with them in a certain area, they're like, hey, I was thinking about this, that, and the other, and how can we incorporate that strategy for the expedited side into what we're doing here? So there's a ton of different methods.
There is, because that person who left their position of, let's say, 20 years, they weren't really doing expedited maybe in those 20 years, but their new position, they are.
Yes. And they have something that when you step into a new role, you want to, make change. You want to make impact. You want to be worthy of that change and show that there's possibilities for that new organization. And it's exciting. It's invigorating. And so it's utilizing that as a springboard for your career within that organization.
Yeah. And it doesn't happen overnight, right?
No.
When did you really get active on LinkedIn?
I started my profile in 2009.
Okay.
So obviously LinkedIn was not.
Nowhere
near.
No.
But I did, over a course of time, I've built up my followers to about almost 15,000 followers. So I'd say in the past 3 years.
3 years really and LinkedIn really blossomed about 3 years ago.
During the pandemic.
During the pandemic, right?
Yes.
So you're talking about 3 years of hustling and grinding.
And networking. Talking to people consistently, asking outrageously. I remember when I sent you a message going, Kevin, I want to be on Put Down That Coffee.
Yeah.
And I was scared to death, doing that, right?
But you co-hosted there in
did.
early 2021.
Yeah. A couple of shows.
Yeah, a few shows. Yeah.
So I remember though, but it was doing those types of activities to really start establishing really myself and my comfort level to do this. I watched.
That doesn't happen overnight
no,
either, getting comfortable doing all this.
I was on with Craig Fuller. I was on with him. I remember the light came on and it was live and my heart is beating and I'm like, oh my God. But that's significantly changed. And so it just, again, that comfort level of putting yourself out there. We talk about this all the time. I host a podcast called LLC, which is Ladies Leadership Coalition.
That's
We're
right. Yes.
always talking about putting yourself out there, whether it's to customers, networking.
Yeah. And just like sales, you put yourself out there, you have to deal with people who don't like you.
Right.
Yeah. People who say no.
Yes. People who don't understand anything of what you're trying to do.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who want to be negative or whatever. And you just have to ignore those people. Right. And it takes a while to be able to be comfortable with just ignoring that. And just staying focused on your mission, which is to really, at the end of the day, be more happy and more successful. Oftentimes in sales, in business, that means making more money.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes putting your blinders on and being okay with the word no, like you said, and just staying towards the mission. And the one thing of no, sometimes it's just not right now.
Exactly.
In sales.
And it kind of goes with that long-term game, right? Someone who you've known that has told you no in this position, they move positions, all of a sudden that's a yes. And oftentimes to be really, to operate at the height of your personal branding is sometimes you're a psychologist. To people you network with. You're a job finder, right? You're a recruiter, connecting people together. You're certainly a problem solver. That has nothing to do with what you're selling. You're solving any problem you can by introducing to people. You're connecting people, right?
Exactly.
And that's all part of that personal brand that you don't really see plastered out there. It's what you're doing in the background.
And it can't just be about yourself.
No.
It has to be about giving back and really trying to lift your network to actually bring success to themselves along the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part that a lot of people miss.
It is. It's a part, being a giver, not a receiver, right? And then you develop this kind of back channel where you're trading intelligence too.
Yes.
You're trading information. Some would say it's gossip. Sometimes it is. But oftentimes it's intelligence about what's happening, so you're glued in better than your competitors.
Exactly.
And you can convey that to your customers in the market and broader, social media. Heightens the quality of your posts.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for myself with that is learning about even different companies on what they need to do. Like, hey, I've heard I'm working with company X and this has happened in my network. And they're like, they keep coming to me for Y, and that seems to be a good space for you. So, and I think on the sales side of things, I sometimes consider what some people will call cold. I consider that warm. So if there's any sort of referral or even just someone giving me a name, right? They'll go, hey, I've been working with company X and I work with John there.
Yeah.
And John keeps expressing he has a need for blah, blah, blah. This is a good lead in for you. And I'll say, hey, will you introduce me to John? And they'll go, well, I really, So then I have to reach out to John. And some people consider that to be a cold reach out, whereas I have some intel, right? And so I figure that is still not freezing. It's not a freezing reach out.
It's not freezing whatsoever. And if you're building a personal brand, it's like that person can go Google your name.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden that they can see a lot of content, that they can get to know you. So you're not a cold person either, because there's a lot of information. They can go to LLC and listen to a podcast, or see that you're doing a podcast, and you're not this stranger. What does this person want? You are somebody who can add value just by talking to.
Yeah, and that's the whole concept of it with the, like you said, the brand building is getting it out there. I think the hard part for people when they do develop their brand, you almost start feeling like, I don't want to be braggadocious either, right? So I have a great following and I've done this and I've done that. You still need to be humble with it, and understand that even by doing that, like you said before, some people might go, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you just filter those people out.
Yes.
Definitely. But let's talk a little bit about LLC, Ladies Leadership Coalition.
Yes.
Right? And how that started and how that's going. I see that quite a bit on social media, LLC podcast. How is it?
It's good. So we started it really, I'd say mid-pandemic.
Yeah.
And the whole concept was to really help women. And we started off with just more of the business mindset. And then we started understanding, of course, because we had 6 female women who were in logistics. We're like, guys, who are we kidding? We have to talk about business, but we have to talk about logistics, right? And supply chain. And so we went from just doing panels with all the 6 business owners to doing some great interviews too, to really bring in some people who have just great nuggets for other people to learn from. So, I mean, we've had shows on burnout. We've had shows on networking. We've had shows on finance. Like, how do you financially get yourself set up? What can you do? I mean, there's been so many different discussions, sales, marketing. I mean, it's going great. It's been hard too, because it's more of a passion project. So we don't have a team of people like you do at FreightWaves that could just help. So a lot of that is myself and the other women that we're running that. So been working behind the scenes actually to get some more help with that internally here. So that way we can actually get more content out there and help people more and get more of those stories out. But I love doing it. I have met so many wonderful people from doing that. I have learned so much myself. And I'm assuming you have too by hosting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the main reason why I love doing it is I'm learning all the time. I'm learning all the time. I love founder stories. I love, how people get started here and there. And I've heard yours from Joe Lynch and Logistics, one of those episodes. Fascinating story. And it's just you learn, and then you transfer what you learn and you apply it. Yeah. You apply that knowledge, you incorporate those areas where you can grind and persistence, and it kind of carries you through, and it's fantastic. Yeah.
For me, it's something that even if I didn't put these shows out anymore, I'm like, how could I utilize this as a platform to even help people? So I've had women come to me now I was at a air cargo conference last week, and Lorena, and I can't remember her last name for the life of me right now, but she approached me and she was like, hey, I'm doing this. I've seen this. How can you help me? And I'm like, whatever I can do to help you start marching toward your goals, game on,
Yeah. And I think that's another facet of that is same. I have a lot of conversations, and I'm not even thinking about a commercial transaction. Yeah. On 99%. that 1% or whatever that percentage is, that it's like, oh yeah, this is right down my alley. I can do this. Then you take advantage of that.
Yeah.
But
So you're
99% of the
selling,
time,
like by networking, you're almost selling because
Yes.
people are starting to identify
Mhm.
with what value you bring to certain things. So
Yes.
again, by that.
and they seek you out.
Yes.
Yes.
And so tying all of that together shows that obviously developing that takes time,
Mhm.
right? To get yourself out there and feel vulnerable to do that. But it's just part of that whole sales side of things too. You could tie these things in with building out your network,
Yeah.
helping individuals.
And it's something that Richie and I always talked about is how do you go from a salesperson? You always, ideally, you want to go from a salesperson to a consultant.
Mhm.
And the only way to do that is by what we've been talking about.
Yes.
Networking, getting that network going, get that inside information going, becoming an expert at what you do.
And that's how I've positioned myself consistently is as that consultative approach.
Yes.
And so, especially in my space, being an expedite, a lot of people don't even realize. And we just posted a report on this. We call it a dirty little secret.
Yeah.
But really, expedite can be a hidden gem because it's one of those things with a strategy behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to go in and identify a process that can actually save people money.
Yep.
And by doing that and having that consultative approach, what you do as a sales rep, then you are listening to the things that are transpiring at a customer, sometimes pulling information like, hey, what about this? How did you ever approach this? And utilizing that. And that's where some of that magic happens because some people don't even realize that we are expediting product. We are running a truckload lane here. We do have air freight. And so it's fascinating to me to have that mindset on the consultant side.
It is.
Yes.
And it's much more fun selling
Yes.
if you're a consultant than if you're trying to beat somebody down on the hard sell.
Yep.
It
I
really
agree.
is. Well, Nicole, thanks so much for actually, I'm dropping by.
Yes, thanks for having me
but
on.
Thanks
though.
for letting me come by and talk sales for a few minutes. And
Great.
if our audience wants to reach out, learn more, certainly LinkedIn, Nicole Glenn,
LinkedIn,
any
yes,
other methods?
definitely. I mean, and then you can also find us on our website. It's just candorexp.com. But shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I am on that thing throughout the day all the time. So thank you again.
Perfect. Thank you. And that wraps it up for this episode of Put That Coffee Down. Every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time here on FreightWaves TV.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been getting all the work. And I've been shutting down.